Continuing our financial independence versus retirement series, one thing they both have in common is that you no longer get your sense of purpose from work. And now, on to our conversation.
Welcome to the Mind Money Spectrum podcast, where your hosts, Aaron Ogti and Trishul Patel, go beyond traditional finance questions to help you explore how to use your money to achieve the freedom you want in life.
Hi, my name is Aaron Ogti. I'm a financial advisor in the Bay Area, and I'm here with Trishul Patel, a wealth manager on the East Coast.
Hey, Aaron, great to be here today, and thanks everybody for listening and watching.
Great to be here as well. So, our last couple episodes, we've been talking about this idea of financial independence versus retirement, how they are not the same thing, and where we see differences. In the past, we talked about especially financial independence when you were younger versus a old-fashioned traditional retirement age. But this kind of applies to those who have pursued FIRE, the financial independence retire early, where they have achieved financial independence and they do decide to stop working. And today I want to get into the non-financial risks of retirement. If you're no longer working, what are some of the life risks that you might be taking on? This kind of touches on some conversations I've had with a few clients recently, but also one of our really old podcast episodes. I had talked about the 4 domains of well-being. This is from some research that they're roughly financial health, physical mental health is second, friends, family, community, kind of the where do you belong, and this kind of sense of purpose, the like where your self-esteem comes from, where do you like internally drive, like I'm good at this, I'm getting better at this is how I improve. And those 4 domains are really important for like life in general. This also comes up with the hierarchy of needs we talked about previously. But for most people, for years, usually decades, 3 of those 4 things come from work. The community, the friends, kind of the people they interact with on a regular basis is usually at work. The financial health comes from the income from work. And the purpose or the sense of accomplishment also comes from work. They are working hard. They're actually getting feedback of, yes, you're doing a good job. And you'll see raises and promotions. Or this job doesn't quite provide that sense of purpose or accomplishment, that they go look for a new job and they find a new manager that's helping encourage them. And when you retire, you lose all of that. It's not just the loss of income. And that's what a lot of people, I think, when they think about financial independence is, oh, I have enough money. I don't need the income from work, which is true. But it's the other 2 parts that they may lose without realizing it. I think that's what I really want to talk about today, is that kind of, in addition to friends, family, community, because that's can be replaceable, but that's very much a risk, and that sense of purpose. And to be very blunt, some of the bigger non-financial risks in retirement, so this applies you actually did stop working, usually come from loneliness or depression. That like if you start to get sedentary, you don't have something that you're excited to get out of bed to do, and you aren't interacting with a community that you also kind of get just all the warm and fuzzy feelings.
Mm-hmm.
So, do you want to kind of add anything to that, like looking at the 4 domains, or like where we see work? And kind of, I want to, we'll get back to the like financial independent early-ish versus a older traditional retirement. But when you think of those 4 domains and what people get through work and what they lose when they stop working, anything you want to add there as we start this conversation?
I think those were the big ones that you mentioned. The top headline that we kind of hear sometimes is that individuals who end up leaning towards retirement like early, for example, end up having shorter lifespan, right?
Mhm.
And
Actually, I think that's not just people who retire early. I think it's at every age level that there's pretty strong data. The longer you work, the longer you live.
yeah, yeah,
But it
yeah.
is hard to separate like socioeconomics from that kind of research. But yes, if your brain's engaged and you work till you're 70, you probably live longer than someone who's
Yeah.
stopped working at 60.
And there is some correlation causation concerns
Yeah.
there. For example, somebody may pursue early retirement because they're unhealthy, right? Because
Yeah.
they can't physically go to work. So realizing that, but what we're trying to shine a light on here is the notion that there are healthy aspects to having the routine of going
Mhm.
to work and encompassing that part of your life that you kind of forego, right? When you
Mhm.
transition to this new phase of your life.
That's a great point. And I think even for most people for decades, that routine is also not an active decision.
Mhm.
Like they have to go to work. So like it almost is an easier mental load to follow that routine because they don't have to spend any mental energy making that decision.
Right. Yeah. It's like forced discipline, kind of.
Kind of, yeah, yeah.
It's also, we've said this before, the notion that discipline actually leads to freedom, right? Even though it
Mhm,
sounds like something harsh and cruel, it actually opens up the opportunity to do more things by having some discipline. And if it's imposed on you, well, then, yeah, you don't necessarily have a choice, but you can enjoy some of the freedom that comes with that. Meaning, for example, the freedom to be a little bit more healthy, right?
mhm,
Because you're um, actively engaging your mind, and the freedom to socialize more because you're not isolated, and things like that.
mhm, mhm. So, w other do you think are there any other non-financial risks that you can think of, or do you wanna get more nuanced, more specific when it comes to if you are no longer working? Because again, you're financially independent, you have enough money, and
Yeah.
you decide to stop working. And I imagine you have some very personal experience with this, but other non-financial risks that we should talk about today.
Well, there's some things to think about. And yeah, as you alluded to, it might be different whether you're in your 40s, 50s, or 60s as
Mhm,
well. For example, if you are not going into like a steady job and you're older, and your health starts to become impaired, it can also impact your ability to have social interactions, which you mentioned. But yeah, there's a few other things. For example, you may need to depend on somebody more in your household, right? Something like um, uh, a family support system might be more important at that point because nobody's really checking in on you, right?
oh,
If you're at home and you don't have anybody else. Whereas if you are going to work, somebody might notice, hey, you've been limping, or you seem very
mm.
stressed out, things like that. So I can see how that might flow into one's overall well-being.
So so that'd be someone who's single, not in a relationship, not living with someone.
Yeah, but also as you age, we all can't be with a life partner forever, right? If you
Yeah.
end up being the life partner that is the surviving partner, well, then that might also be something that you have to contend with.
Okay. Okay. So the reason I wanted to have this conversation as part of our kind of financial independence versus retirement series is I've actually had a couple client cases where they kind of got lucky with an IPO and they are now financially independent. And again, there's inspiration for the series. They're in their 40s, they could stop working, but I'm trying to make sure that they don't stop working, I guess, too soon. I'm trying to yeah, like I want them to take some time and be a little more deliberate
Hmm.
because I think that there's other risks that if they just stop working just because they can, I, I don't think they are emotionally ready for it or psychologically ready. I'm trying to think how to phrase that. But so for those who are financially dependent, I kind of don't want them to retire yet. And they'll probably get there soon, maybe within a year. But for those who are older, similarly, we've talked about this before, like there's a classic phrase with financial advisors, you want to have something you're retiring to, not something
Mhm.
you're retiring from.
Right. Yeah.
And enough of my conversations with those in their 60s does
Yeah.
feel like they have enough hobbies and friends that, yeah, work keeps getting in the way. They got to stop going to the office so they can go spend more time with friends and doing their fun hobbies.
Yeah. Yeah. So I hate to be trite, but it helps to have a plan, right?
Yeah.
It helps to have some notion of how this is going to play out.
So another kind of observation I want to add to that, again, that difference, especially with age, a lot of times if you're in your 40s, your friends are also in their 40s usually. And just
Yeah.
because you're financially independent doesn't mean they are.
Right.
So it's hard to find time to go have lunch with friends who are still working. It's possible, like it takes extra work. Whereas when you're in your 60s, if you again, we talked about those four domains. If you have that good group of friends and they're all retired, it's almost easier to meet up with them and interact with them. And that was one thing I've never actually asked you. When you achieved fire and kind of stopped working, did you ever think about the friendship side?
Well, so a part of it was, you have your work related friends and colleagues, and then you have your outside of work colleagues. And, frankly, when you're working, there's little time for the outside, for friends and families. So y- I think the shift was we were able to spend more time, with outside work, friends and families, especially because we had the opportunity to visit other people, right? We had the time to take longer vacations or
Mm,
travel to where other people may be. Whereas it's a little more challenging, right? If you're trying to do that in an employment situation, I think I mentioned this, right? When I first started on the hedge fund, I had for like my first year 0 vacation days. Like
yeah.
that was part of my contract, and it was still nights and weekends on top of that.
Mhm,
But and then things got a little bit better, from there on out. But even so, it's hard, right? Because you're working on a pretty aggressive schedule, and
mhm.
you may have the standard holidays, but then we all know everybody's trying to fly to X or do Y
Yeah,
on, like between Christmas and New Year's and so on, or the 2 days, between Thanksgiving and, Black Friday and so on.
yeah.
So, honestly, just to be frank, that actually got a little easier to socialize more once I made that
Okay.
transition.
Were you seeing more friends kind of out of town or more friends locally?
But probably out of town. Or, I seem to have jumped around a good amount, so I had friends here and there. So that's kind of how that worked. And I mentioned this in the previous episode that the when I first made the transition, my wife and I rented the house where we are right now,
Mhm.
and we kind of the plan was to hit the road and travel a good amount.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah,
So, because I know you have talked about how it was about when your daughter was born, and like you decided you wanted to stop working there.
yeah.
So, do you feel like you had something to retire to?
Well, so a good part of it was I was a bit burned out, so I didn't have a real
Mm,
plan.
okay.
So the real notion was I just wanted to take a break, and a long break or an indefinite break, and really did not have a good plan on what I wanted to do. But
Okay.
what it did force me to do is actually come up with a plan once I did the thing, right? So
Yeah. Yeah.
I mentioned this before. I just sat down with a blank sheet of paper and just kind of went through what do I want my future life or present life to look like or evolve to from here. How do I want to structure my days so that I am filling it with things that provide me with a sense of purpose and value?
Okay. Okay. So, so you felt comfortable that you still spent time with family. Do you feel like you had a sense of community somewhere?
Well, so it was a little tricky because what we did is my wife and I wanted to do a lot of hiking and
Mhm.
backpacking and RVing and stuff like that. So we set up a home base on like the west coast of Florida, which is a little different than the East Coast. It's a lot more
Okay.
rural and a lot more forestry, I guess, and a lot more naturey. So, for example, the city that we moved in, it was a fresh city that was just getting off the ground, and it didn't even have a population to support the city itself.
Oh, really?
Like literally just open tracts of land that they were trying to develop and make into a city. So it gave us it was pretty out there, but it gave us an opportunity to just you know travel around there and do a lot of nature stuff. So uh, we didn't really focus on building a community there because we knew it was kind of like a transient phase for us,
Okay.
and it just frankly gave us time to decompress. I think that was the rough plan.
Hmm.
So the other thing to add on top of it is we had a newborn, and
Yeah.
the first 6 months with a newborn, you're not actually looking to start
Yeah.
new crazy social ventures. It's
It
just
we've joked around with like preparing new parents. Like you'll have time to decide, do you sleep or shower? Because you don't
yeah,
actually have time to do both.
right. It's like
Much
the whole
less go meet up with friends and family out of town.
it's like the college thing. You can sleep, eat, or or bathe, but you can't do all three.
Yeah.
Pick two.
Yeah.
So it really wasn't on our mind to do so much beyond that, frankly. Like we just managed to fit in the basics of being able to support that. And then also what we realized when we did add up what it actually took to be with a newborn is it seemed like it was more than two full-time jobs, right?
Oh,
To
okay.
build it up. So it did end up taking up a good amount of our time.
So I guess I want to rephrase the frame of thinking. Like, if you could either give advice to your recently fired, achieved fire younger self, or
Yeah,
you have a client who comes to you as at a similar thing of they are now financially independent.
yeah,
What are some of the, I don't want to say recommendations to start off with because that's too open and too unknown, but like
yeah,
how do you guide a conversation thinking about that? Whether it's
yeah.
again your younger self or a client.
That's a good question because we certainly go through that in the planning process with clients. So I purposely focus on helping my clients achieve financial independence sooner rather than later. And the notion there is we're building out a plan to accelerate the time to reach financial independence.
Hmm.
Now, when we show where that point is for someone's plan, we don't necessarily say, okay, after this, you're not allowed to work or work is a
Okay.
non issue. We just say, this is the point where work becomes optional. And then,
Hmm.
yeah, we actually start the conversation of thinking, okay, what are you going to do now? Right.
Hmm.
And very often, yeah, I'd say the majority of the time, there's often the desire to have some sort of work component. So we might
Okay.
even put in like a half-time notion or a part-time notion or some sort of consulting transition where somebody is still providing benefit from some sort of employment situation,
Mhm.
but the tables are turned. It's fully on their terms. They're deciding the hours, they're deciding even location, virtual, in office, and
Mm.
that's obviously tailored around their personality and their desires. So it is actually part of the conversation that I would have had with myself had I hired myself before
Okay.
I myself made that decision to not do so.
Other than that kind of part-time work or consulting, what else do you talk about?
Yeah, so and then it does come into the notion of hobbies and figuring out how you're going to pursue different interests and whether we can put shine a light on that sooner rather than later, meaning not waiting until that financial independence point to make that transition. Meaning if these are the things from the life planning exercise that are important to you, why not prioritize that as soon as you can?
Okay.
And then once you make that transition, it's not such an abrupt change,
Mm.
meaning you've already been building up these different skill sets in like, fishing more or yachting more or carpentry more. and you're just expanding upon that when you make that transition. So it's not such a stark change.
I do like that. I also push all my clients to think about their life outside of work because, but I do it almost from the flip side of, you don't need to retire or be financially independent to do these things you enjoy.
Mm-hmm.
So it doesn't have to be, we keep working until financially independent, then we stop to do our hobbies. It's kind
Yeah.
of like, if you can start your hobbies sooner, it actually makes it easier to work a little longer. It actually makes a lot of the financial planning look better. You keep
Yeah.
working, keep saving. And so I like that idea of like, there's a like a dual benefit of, don't wait until the future to
Right.
do the things you enjoy. Don't wait until you're financially independent. Don't wait until you're retired. Don't wait. You can start doing those things now and enjoy your life along the way.
Doesn't even have to be a discrete point of financial independence, right? It can be
Yeah,
this continuous path of, okay, I don't need to work 40 hours. I can work 35,
yeah.
30, a few years, 25, and so on. So then you gradually step into the notion of just having more and more free time. And
Okay.
yep.
So here's, I want to. This is uh one of those like pieces of advice that I give clients, that I want to check with you. I want to like double check that, like, this is not normal traditional financial advice. This is not prudent or conservative, but I don't think it's wrong. Actually, I think it's still right, but it's also like, it's not too aggressive. It's kind of like, just, it's a moderate level of risk. I see enough of my clients, and I push them like, hey, you could you'll be fine on your current income plus your savings for a few more years. You don't need a promotion or a raise. Like, you don't need to go above and beyond at work.
Yeah.
And one of the phrases I got from from one of my clients, like, he had built up enough efficiencies at work that he could do the same job in less time. I
Yeah.
was like, yeah, stop taking meetings after 4 p.m. Or especially if they have still have kids, like, oh, you have to stop working at 3 p.m. to go pick up kids from school.
Yeah.
And the like, I have seen several clients do this. They've followed my advice, and they actually kept getting raises and promotions. They were working fewer hours, but they like, this created this like scarcity thing of, they were saying no to meetings, and like,
Right.
oh, this person must be really valuable and really important, and they got promotions and raises anyways.
Yeah.
And it's also like, helped, like, they started delegating a little bit more. Uh, be like this. My wife actually did this, and I do think being in tech, because she's dropping off kids and getting into the office at 8:30 ish, if not sooner, and a lot of engineers historically will show up around 10. Like,
I remember those days.
she was leaving at 3,
Yeah.
and she still had all her work done, and so she was seen
Yeah.
as more efficient. She kept getting promotions and raises. She kept kind of delegating well. But I've given this advice to clients, like, just stop working 40 hours. Because again, the worst, so especially if they get close to financial independence, like they're really close,
Yeah.
I don't want you to stop working. I want you to stop working extra.
Yeah. 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 No,
And
that's
so, yeah,
awesome. Awesome advice. Yeah.
yeah, it's like, yeah, just stop working at 4 p.m., 3 p.m., especially for those who are salaried and they're really close. Like, you don't need another RSU grant. Just stay here for a year or two and let your current RSU grant vest.
Yeah.
That kind of thing. And so, I it was that you had said, it's not binary. It's not, you must work and now you're financially independent. And
Yeah.
I've actually had conversations when it comes to even with withdrawal rate research. It's still not binary. It's like, a 4% safe withdrawal is a safe withdrawal rate at 60, but we could probably go to 4.5, even 5. If we include Social Security at 70, we can probably even go up to 6 or 7, knowing that will come down in the future. If you're younger, If you have more time, so you'll probably go down to 3%. But if you're willing to be flexible or work a little bit, we can go a little higher. So like, it is more nuanced. And so let's say, yes, if we can get you to work a couple extra years,
Yep.
it allows us to almost be more conservative from a financial perspective. But don't work hard a couple extra years.
Right.
Like, really start to like scale back, work on the hobbies more. Like, oh, and it's like for those like without kids, doesn't even have to be kids. Like, oh, I have to leave at 3 to go hiking.
Yeah, schedule, put it on your calendar. This is
Exactly,
my
exactly.
weekly movie night or movie day, movie afternoon.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Like, leave at lunchtime and don't come back in the afternoon.
Right. Yeah. The other big one, take all your vacations. Like, just take them.
Oh,
Don't
I
let them
have
roll over.
a lot of tech companies now have gone to discretionary time off. So it's like
Yeah.
it's unlimited time off as long as you get approval. And like,
Yeah.
ooh, this could be fun. We're gonna push the limits of seeing if your boss can actually say something. Like, I want you to take like I want you to take 3 months off, like 12
Yeah.
weeks spread out throughout the year.
Right. Yeah.
And like I want you to take so much that they actually come to you like, hey, I think you might be taking too much time off. Like, great, that's perfect. That's the right amount.
Right. Yeah. But what we're talking about here is that sense of having like FU money, right? The ability to mentally say, even if
True.
you're not quite there, to say, sorry, I have bargaining power at this point. I'm not beholden to this paycheck.
I have called it psychological leverage of like, yeah, exactly.
Okay.
And you said it's the I think this is yeah, this is a great point. Like that bargaining power, that idea. It's like, yes, you're financially independent. Don't stop working, but say no to a lot of things.
Hmm. Yeah.
Like, say no to meetings. I just don't take the meeting because again, I think this is probably the best of both worlds almost.
Yeah.
Where you've been doing something that you've been good at. You've been accomplished great. You've saved up enough. You are now financially healthy. You're now financially independent,
Hmm.
and so you could stop working. But it's nice to get kudos at work. It feels good to be recognized for your talents and skills, and that's a
Yeah.
normal human thing. And so you get to kind of choose to do the good, nice, fun things at work without doing the things you don't like.
Hmm.
Because the worst case scenario is they fire you, but you're already financially independent.
Yeah. Yeah.
You,
So it's one of those things. It can still be a win-win because you have all this legacy of experience where if
yes,
you did leave, it would be um, not so great for the company, but you
yeah,
can still provide value at some level that can be important for the employer to keep you there. So,
yeah,
let's not diminish all that track record or all that momentum you build up over your career. It's useful to be able to put that to work even if it's at a lower capacity. It's still far better than, for example, if you've been doing the same position for like 10
yeah.
years, then the employer having to find somebody and build up that level of acumen over, a handful of years to get to where you are today. It would cost far more. So it can
Oh
still
yeah,
be a win-win.
that's a great point. So I have been pushing them from the perspective of employers have shown that they're not going to be loyal to the employees, which is a
Yeah.
related to another conversation. So there's no reason for them to feel loyal to the company.
Hmm.
So, like, if they want to put in 30 hours, put in 30 hours. Like, again, don't feel like you need to go above and beyond. But I try to push my clients to be selfish, I guess I'd say. And I
Yeah.
like your framing better where no, any time the company gets from you still helps the company because of that built up institutional knowledge that like they still benefit from you staying even if it's on your terms.
Yeah, look, the way employment works in this country is it's at will employment. That means
Yeah.
you get to decide whether you want to work there, and the employer gets to decide whether they want you to work there. And if both parties agree, great, right? It's a win-win, and that's how it should be. And I think never should it be the fact that, oh, they hired me, now I have to do whatever they say. And then also for the
Yeah.
employer, oh, I hired them, now I can't, make them do anything because they're,
Yeah.
they're locked in and locked in for life. No, it's at will, right? And it should be a benefit for both parties. And frankly, I think that's how businesses should work, right?
Yeah.
We're not hopefully doing this to be slaves or to own slaves. We're all independent people.
So, okay, I do love this idea. Like, if you're financial, this is almost why like I have been pushing back against FIRE in general. That's probably like the genesis of our podcast, of our conversations. Like, yes, I want you to be financially independent, but don't just retire, and also don't like scrimp to be financially independent. Like, there's some either like you want to be financially independent to stop working, you're probably better off just getting a new job with a new boss, having a different manager. That would probably solve, I'm going to guess, 90% of the problems for any generic person.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, even if you are financially independent, still don't stop working, because there's so many other non-financial benefits to the work that you probably shouldn't or don't need to retire early. Like, you have to have it comes back, you have to have a really good reason to stop working.
Yeah.
Like, you're leaving work to do something.
Yeah.
Not just getting out of work.
So there's a few ways to frame it, but before we even get to that, I think we even mentioned this in our first conversation, and it is the genesis of this podcast. And in fact, it even went into the title, right? The whole notion of there's a spectrum here. You have the standard retirement age of 65. What? I can't even see my hands. I'm
Yeah.
go like this on this side of the spectrum, and you have retire as soon as possible. But of course, you have everything in between, right? It's
Yeah.
all fair game, and it all depends on the individual and what they're comfortable with. There is no right or wrong, frankly. So just having that spelled out, just one more time, I think it's helpful to understand. But the point I wanted to also just follow up on is the notion that if you are retired, if if you have some notion of financial independence, that can be completely different, independent of retiring. How that fits into your notion of retirement, it could be completely uncorrelated if you don't want to tie it to that. It's more of just a feeling of, okay, work is now optional. From there, do what you want, right? Do what makes the most sense. And like we're trying to allude to, having a plan would be helpful to increase your life satisfaction.
So now, instead of kind of in speaking like kind of generalities, like, do you see more people or I guess more clients that they would find that sense of purpose from some other work, or do they go out and find like a new volunteering role, a new hobby? Like, what is most likely for most people, kind of thing?
I think what I see the most often is people want to work at some capacity in their specified career that they've been doing, just at a diminished level, right? At a half-time, part-time. So that's what I think is the most common in terms of what I've seen. For me, frankly, here I am in
Yeah.
finance, talking about finance. For myself, I just think, live, and breathe it. So it's hard to stop doing that after so long. And I imagine that may be true for many other people.
That's a great point. So it's almost like an emeritus type of role where they have the knowledge, they still want to contribute to the organization or the cause. They want to help, but they don't want to do it at 40 hours a week. They wanted to do it 20 hours a week, 40 weeks a year, something like that.
Yeah, renegotiation time, right? Just let's
Yeah.
come up with something. And again, this can be a win-win, but by all measures. It doesn't have to be I'm getting what I want, so it sucks for everybody else. It certainly
Yeah.
can be a win-win.
That's a good point. Yeah, Now that you point that out, I do see uh consulting roles or contractor projects like those, especially for those who are in tech, those do play out pretty consistently.
Hmm.
Um,
Yeah.
yeah, so trying to think of, again, going back to helping my clients who are financial dependent. I've asked them to hold off from leaving work for a year or so, and then kind of a what's next. And yeah, that's actually probably the big question, like that what's next?
Yeah.
Because I think they need to be able to answer that question. And again, it's their money; they can stop working whenever they want, but they hired me to be their advisor. It's like, you need to answer that question to my satisfaction before I can wholeheartedly support you leaving the company.
It's a good question to ask. So it falls into, we alluded to this earlier, the whole life planning
Yeah,
discussion, meaning what do you want to get out of your life, right? It's not about how much money are you going to have in dollars and cents out every year, for the rest of your life. It's really, what are the most important goals? What are the
yeah,
most important things that you would regret if you didn't do? And let's prioritize that.
yeah. I think getting back to what you talked about, like the discipline. One of the exercises I do push my clients is the Kinder Institute does a ideal day, ideal week, ideal year,
Hmm.
because it one helps build in that routine. Like, you get to decide what your routine is, and it breaks it out into different time frames. Like, ideal year includes a certain number of vacations, that we're going to go vacation this long, this often. But you're not going to spend every day on vacation. That's a different lifestyle. That, like, there's those who want to be the world travelers. They get the room on the ship and they actually do spend every day, but that's not a vacation, that's their lifestyle. So that's the difference. The ideal day is forces them to be specific. What time do you wake up in your ideal day? What's the first thing you do? What's the second thing? Like, you have to build in the hours, and because you get to choose what it is, that gets you that feeling of, you get up in the morning and you're excited to go do something on that day.
Hmm.
But then you also build it on a weekly rhythm where you don't need to go play golf every day. For those who think, who again follow the classic retirement trope, I'm going to golf, I'm going to retire so I can play golf every day. It's like, well,
Yeah.
yes, you can if you really, really love that. But if it's the spending time with friends golfing, like, how about once a week? And there
Yeah.
you've created, like, I've met several people, like, I golf every Tuesday. Okay, that's awesome. Like, you're looking forward to Tuesdays because you go golf, and then you go see movies on Wednesdays. Okay, that's cool.
Hmm.
Like, you're not looking forward to Wednesdays to go see, and you create this weekly rhythm. That's why I like that ideal week, ideal day, ideal week, ideal year,
Yeah.
where again, it's you're choosing that discipline, you're choosing that structure, that routine, but you still have the structure, you have the discipline, you have the routine that allows you to kind of feel like you're thriving. It's the unopened, like, waking up, huh? What am I gonna do today? That's one of the bigger risks in retirement, that for both those who retire in their 40s and those who retire in their 60s.
Hmm.
It's that if you don't know what you're doing when you wake up in the morning, you got to figure that out.
Yeah, yeah, and you could go a little bit, but if you let things atrophy too long, it does kind of spiral and compound. Just that whole negative compounding
Yeah.
and kind of dig into things. While you're mentioning that, I just pulled up the episode just so that we know it was for our listeners, episode 129 and 130, where we dug into that. So it might be helpful to check those out if you're interested in just seeing what we talked about at length
Mhm.
about ideal day, week, and year.
Yeah, that's yeah. I like your idea. Like, for those who still have to work, it's not necessarily bad because it's like that discipline's forced upon them. But for those who no longer have to work, they should still like find some way to instill that discipline upon themselves.
Yeah. The analogy that I kind of think of is when you're in high school, you go to classes and everything is like all structured and the bell rings and you go to the next one. And then you become a freshman, right? In university, and all of a sudden, oh wait, I don't have to go to class.
Yeah.
I don't have to get up early. I don't have to read a textbook or I don't have to do anything really. You're
Yep.
basically a young adult with total freedom and all of
You.
these things that maybe you'll get tested on in like 6 months or whatever, however that works. But there's that transition period of, okay, now you're in charge of your own destiny and you got to make some important
Yeah.
decisions. And frankly, find a way to self-discipline yourself
Yep.
so that you're able to actually, rise above the freedom that you've been delivered.
Yeah. That's a good point. I remember a couple pieces of advice I got in high school that going to college. One was ignore the news, like just ignore the outside world. But two, like, okay, when you graduate high school, you're either going to go to work at a 40-hour a week job or you go to college. You still have a 40 hours a week that you have to devote. Your classes are only going to take 12-ish of those 40 hours. You need to build in that structure of 8 hours a day, 5 days a week, and that's how you make sure that you succeed in your classes. And that was one thing I did okay with. Wasn't great.
I was gonna say that's good advice, Aaron. I could have used that. I don't think
I
I don't think
I
I
did
received
okay
that
with it.
email.
Mostly because I was able to like not take a class before 10 a.m. kind of thing. So
Yeah.
it was the current engineer thing. It's like, yeah, going from 10 a.m. to 7 p.m. That's easy for a college student.
I think well, the old, I think we even mentioned in this podcast, what is it? You can work, sleep, or party, but you can't
Yeah,
do
yeah,
all study, sleep, or party. Pick two.
yeah. So yeah, like, that is a good analogy but it's I won't say it's harder and the stakes are bigger, but it's also like you don't get immediate feedback. So like if you screw around in college, you get an F. Like, oh, you did the wrong thing. You made the wrong choices. If you do it in retirement, it's like you get Alzheimer and die.
Well, that's not so immediate. Like,
Correct. That's
it's
what
not
my
like
point.
end of semester and retirement. Like, whoops.
Um, but it's that negative compounding thing. It's like if you have made a bad decision, you don't get the feedback,
Yeah,
and so you don't know that you're going down this negative spiral. It's like,
yeah.
oh, I had a very relaxing year. I what'd you do? I don't know. Played on my phone a lot. I think I did the crossword every day.
I will say that maybe there is a bit of a difference in the other direction, meaning, as we had just mentioned, when you're in college, it really is hard to do all the partying you want, all the studying you want, all the sleeping you want.
Yeah.
But I think when you're retired, you could probably do all three, meaning you just don't want to do
Um,
all that same amount of any of those three. You don't need to sleep as much. You're like in your 60s. All right, sleep 5 hours. You're fine. All right, you don't
okay.
need to party as much, and you don't need to work as
Um,
much.
I think what I mean from that is if you don't have that plan in place for college, you
Yeah,
fail and you find out 2 months later.
yeah,
If you don't have that plan in place for retirement, I mean, you don't fail. You don't find out
yeah,
until years later when your health has gotten worse.
yeah.
Because it's if your health starts going downhill, it's really hard to get it back up
Hmm.
to a healthy stage. You find that you're doing less, and like you said, is that you go down that negative compounding,
Yeah.
and you don't know how to fix it either. You just have like something like, ah, life, you're languishing. Like life is just moving along. You don't feel like you're thriving, even though like maybe you start spending money, but it doesn't make you happy.
Yeah.
And so that's why I say like the stakes are bigger, and you don't get the feedback.
I think you're right. I think the point I'm trying to, or the color I'm trying to add is, I think it's the stakes are higher, but I think it's potentially easier to pull off. You have less pressure on having to earn, right? You don't have the 20-year-old mindset of, oh boy, I got to turn this into a career and do all this, the kids, the wife, and all the other thing. At some point, you've done all that, right? You've taken care of the big stuff, and you've taken the pressure off of needing to get income to survive, so that
Okay.
that's not an issue anymore either. So that and you have hopefully some erudition over decades of being alive that can help you out a bit. Now, I'm not
Okay.
saying
So
you
I think
can
I'm gonna say
go.
it's maybe stakes isn't the right word. I'm trying like, but it's like, uh, so it's almost like the stakes are higher, but the bar is lower.
Yeah, there you go.
It's
There you go.
it's
I
not
like
it's
that.
not that easy to clear this bar, but you still gotta get up and like you gotta make that little jump. You
Yeah,
got
you got
to
to
get
do
over
it.
that bar.
You got to do it. I think the demands on college student are frankly pretty high if you want to
Yeah.
really do all the stuff that you're supposed to do.
If you want to
But
party and have good grades, the stakes are it's really hard.
and sleep, and you
Yeah.
didn't even mention exercise or all of the stuff that you're supposed to be doing, right? When
Yeah.
you're, or you know what I mean. There's other stuff that's out there that humans should
Yeah.
be able to do, but it's hard to do when you're that young, and juggle all that, especially being so new to the adulting game.
Mhm. So okay, yeah. So I like that. The stakes are higher because they're like mental fortitude. I don't know how like it's the your physical health and mental health kind of thing, but the bar is like the bar is lower. It's not
Yeah.
that hard to make sure that you are mentally thriving, that your retirement is going well.
Yeah, like another statistic is a large part of mortality is just being weak, and
Yeah.
not having enough muscles to, like, grip strength, like falls. If you take a nasty fall in your 60s just because you couldn't grip the bar in your bathroom, right? And you tumble and you
Mm,
break a hip, that can lead to a vicious cycle that can actually lead to premature death, right? So,
yeah.
um, but building in that exercise routine, like an hour, half an hour a day, even 15 minutes a day, you have the time now that you
Yeah.
may not have had, younger in your life, taking care of kids and building a career and paying off student loans and all the,
Yeah.
hopefully you paid off student loans. I gotta put a caveat on that, or a little asterisk, because oh boy.
Okay, so now oh man. Because like you can be financially independent and still have a mortgage. Like
Oh
that,
yeah.
it still works. So theoretically, you could be financially independent in your 40s and still have student loans.
Yes, that's true.
So, yeah, okay. Total side thing. I honestly don't know what happens to your student loans when you die. Like if you still have a balance of a student loan in your 80s and then you die, is does that come out of your estate? Are you
Well,
still?
the one thing I do know is, for example, student loans have different bankruptcy protection. I think maybe you've heard about that, right, Aaron?
Yeah,
Like,
like
it's harder
they
to get it dismissed in a
yes.
bankruptcy situation than other types of debt, which is a little
Uh,
scary. Yep.
it's both scary, but it's also allows them to have lower interest rates. And so if you remove that, you're protecting the creditor and yeah, like yeah, that's a whole different conversation. But that's the rationale
But
that
but here's my take on when you die. What else is going to happen to them? You can't pass them on to somebody unless unless somebody else is specified as a creditor. They have to die with you. I'm pretty sure. Like, what else could possibly happen?
I could go. Yeah, they could go against your assets for. But I guess
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
don't have if you don't
that's
do
what I mean.
probate,
It'll be charged against your estate. But if your estate
okay.
is zero, then what are they going to do?
Oh well, we're all talking about people who are financially independent and retire.
Oh,
Like
oh, okay.
their estate is not zero.
Sorry, I bet.
They're not financially independent if their net worth is negative.
Yeah, I imagine it depends on the type of loan. If it's a private loan, I imagine it would go against your state. A federal
Yeah.
loan, I just asked the GPT.
Okay. What
Federal
was it?
student loans are discharged when the borrower dies. Look at that.
Oh, federal student loans.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. But
Private are automatically disclosed. Yeah, as we had said.
okay.
Yeah.
Wait. Say it again.
Private loans are not automatically dissolved,
Okay.
discharged.
Got it.
Yeah.
Got it. Okay. But yeah, for most people, it probably makes life a little easier if you pay off your student loans before you retire.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. But what you do is you you get a $100,000 credit card balance.
And then
Oh, it
okay.
doesn't even matter.
Yeah. Okay. Okay. So I think this is helpful. Again, we get back to like the non-financial risks in retirement. And we're joking around a lot, but yeah, it's do you have something when you wake up on Monday? Do you know what you're doing that day?
Yeah.
When you wake up on Tuesday, you know what you're doing that day? Do you know what you're doing next month or the month after? Like, what are you looking forward to? I mean, that's a phrase I use with clients, like that feeling of anticipation.
Mhm.
Because there's like usually like the feeling of anticipation is sometimes better than actually being on the vacation. Like
Mhm.
looking forward to the vacation is where you get a lot of the satisfaction than actually being on the vacation because you're hiking around, you're sweaty, like you're just hot, you're uncomfortable, and then you get to the place and you sit down. It's like it's nice, but you're just sitting around. But yeah, that anticipation feeling. And it's like you could actually build this in to always have that anticipation feeling.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, so the one thing I'll say though is, again, I didn't have that when I pulled the trigger and
Yeah,
or pulled the cord. What do you do? What do you call it when you jump out of the plane? When you
you pull the ripcord.
pull the ripcord. There you go.
Pull the trigger, pull the cord will both work.
Sure. Pull the trigger, shoot your parachute. Hope for the best. I didn't have that full plan, but I had that sheet of paper where I said, "Here's what it looks like," right? And
That's impressive. That like introspection of like, okay, I need to figure this out.
yeah,
Most
yeah.
people don't do that.
And to be honest, it took a few years to get to the point where
Mm,
I look forward to, every day of the week because I have things going on in my life, even
yeah,
though I'm not fully devoted to a 9 to 5.
yeah.
So it was also the notion of a blank sheet of paper. Here's the plan. Now let's do incremental progress, one small
Mhm.
thing every couple weeks or months. And that's frankly what got me to where I am. And we mentioned this like maybe a few years ago in our podcast episodes where it actually did start to feel like, okay, I've built up a rhythm where things are pretty smooth, but I have something to look forward to on a short, medium, long term basis. Frankly, I think it was that ideal day week
Yeah.
or year episode set. So if you're interested, those are the ones to check out.
What's the next thing you're looking forward to? Like you feel it in your bones, like, I can't wait. I'm looking forward to this thing.
Well, so I started a little side project. I've been automating a bunch of things, and I'm just on this kick of I find something small to do, and I start working with the GPT to automate it. I don't know. It's been really fun the past few weeks. So for whatever
Okay.
reason, I'm looking forward to that, and I've been doing that for the past um every day. It
Okay.
seems like.
Okay. I actually have a friend coming into town from out of town on next Monday. Then
Yeah.
so four of us are gonna go play golf. So I took the
Oh,
day off
neat.
to go play golf.
Yeah, that's fun. Oh, next week's should we even um this is not 2025.
Yeah.
I was about to spill the beans, but
What
I guess
this is going out. What we say?
January
Oh
week.
yeah,
Okay.
January. Yeah. So we're recording this just before Thanksgiving.
Yeah, so here we are. Looking forward to Thanksgiving and what comes with that.
Yeah. When I think about like so that's like at the week level kind of thing. For
Yeah.
me, like ideal year level in end of January. So by the time this does come out, I go to do a ski trip with my dad and my brother, and my
Nice.
mom comes along as well. So we go spend a few days around near Vail. I think it's in Avon, Colorado.
Hmm.
So we do couple days at Vail, one day at Beaver Creek. We've done this a few years in a row. Like, that's a really fun trip that I'm looking forward to. I can feel that in my bones.
Neat.
So,
Good stuff, Aaron.
Yeah. So again, if you want to thrive in retirement, you got to have stuff that you're looking forward to.
It's helpful to have a plan. Don't need to execute it and have it perfected, but a plan is helpful.
Great. Well, it's good talking to you today, Trishul. We'll do it again next month.
All right, Aaron, good stuff. Thanks everybody for listening. If you're enjoying these conversations, hit that subscribe. Take care, everyone. Bye.
Bye. We appreciate you joining us today for this episode of the Mind Money Spectrum podcast. Be sure to visit mindmoneyspectrum.com to access the entire library of episodes. Remember, it's not black and white, but the wide spectrum of gray area where you get to pursue the freedoms you want in life. Opinions voiced in this material are for general information only and are not intended to provide specific advice or recommendations for any individual. All performance referenced is historical as no guarantee of future results. All indices are unmanaged and may not be invested in directly. Have a nice day.